Hey folks, welcome to Market Technical Analysis by InTheMoneyStocks.com, your leaders in pure technical analysis, avoiding all the Wall Street hype. Well, today, March 12th, which is a Wednesday here, 2008, and as we get into this video, we're going to talk a little bit about how the market behaved today and how we expected that, and we talked about that in yesterday's video. We also really want to touch on not so much intraday, because for the most part it was a lackluster day, as we had said yesterday was expected to be, but more so on the resistance points, the support lines, and where we have to watch for this market to consolidate here, and whether or not we're going to see a thrust, pause, thrust motion, which is a very common motion in the market, or more of a pause, 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 thrust motion, as we sometimes also see in this market. So in many instances, there's two different possibilities if we're going to have another move up, which we do slightly anticipate. Now, the odds are just slightly favoring that based on the massive move we had yesterday, but there's also a chance that we break certain numbers on the downside, and that can indicate that we are headed back to the lows, which in a bear market is very possible as well. So let's talk a little bit about that now as we get into this market, and I'm going to flip us on to the intraday E-mini chart, which is the 10-minute March 8 contract on the E-minis. And what you guys can see here is that it was a general day, and let's flip to that intraday market. It was generally a lackluster day. We had one push early, which was a continuation short squeeze, and that basically happened on the open. So in our opinion, what happened was there's a lot of shorts out there yesterday that weren't necessarily traders. They may have been shorts that were going to work during the day that didn't necessarily see the intraday volume and the intraday massive move. They get home last night, okay, I better cover my short on the open tomorrow. Sure enough, here the market opens right around here. We get a little bit of brief selling immediately, but then you get that short covering push, taking it up to the new high, slightly above the double top from yesterday, and ultimately you get a basic sell off the rest of the day. Now you can see here that nice big push up. It was just more of a little continuation short squeeze, trying to get everyone thinking the market's going to go up large again today. Ultimately, what we saw was just after it topped out around 11 o'clock, you just saw constant selling all day. Yeah, you had small bounces along the way, but ultimately you came all the way back down here. Now you can see you had a little bounce here, right into the 20 and the 50 necktie, which again caused selling. Another bounce into the necktie, the 20 and the 50, which again caused selling into the close. So that's the way the day was. You saw that basically happen. The Nasdaq was down about 12 points on the day, or 0.5%. The Dow was down about 47 points, or 0.4%, and the S&P was down about 11 and almost 12 points, which is 0.9%. So again, a lackluster day. We talked about this yesterday as it being the opportune, basically the expectation in this market. And the question will be now, do we hold these levels? So we're going to get into that here in today's once we switch over to the daily chart. So let's switch into the daily chart now, guys. And I want to start on the SPY. So let's start with the SPY, which basically mirrors the S&P on the daily. And what you can see here is we had that monster move up yesterday. Basically a huge, powerful move up. All indexes were up essentially 4% yesterday. The Dow was up 400 and change. The Nasdaq was up basically 80 plus points. And what we saw here today, again, you see that little tail closing in on that 20 moving average. Ultimately, that's going to be some resistance when we finally hit it. I think we may get through that. It looks like our analysis, our technical analysis, is showing that once we do get that secondary push up, we probably get through that and possibly to the 50 moving average. And again, we've been talking about how we've been expecting this move up, and then we also talked about how we were expecting the pause today. And again, it's coming into whether or not you have a pause day and then another thrust. It's what we refer to as a TNT, and InTheMoneyStocks.com TNT play, thrust, pause, thrust. And what it is a powerful move up one day, then you have a small pullback or a pause, and then the next day you have another powerful push up. So that's an IMS TNT play, in the money stocks TNT play. You also have other plays such as a 1, 2, 3 pullback, which is a small pause, 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 or a small pull, pullback, 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 and then a thrust. And again, we'll go into that more in a little while. But these are the general things in the market that can be seen. So they need to be watched for. And again, you can see the small pullback after this monstrous move yesterday. And we retraced, and that's really what you want to see. I mean, this is healthy. So anyone who thinks, oh, we didn't continue today, and that's not a healthy sign, that's not true. In fact, it's much more healthy to see a pause or a pullback like we did today than a continued rally where the markets are up another 2 or 2% or so today. That would not be healthy. And in our opinion, basically what it does is blows its, it's like a marathon runner. It runs a 20-mile, the person runs a 20-mile marathon, and all of a sudden doesn't want to take a break and runs another 20. Well, eventually it's going to collapse. All right, just going to collapse and die of exhaustion or just, totally get taken out. Ultimately, what you want is a marathon runner to run, take a small break, run again, take a small break, and it's more powerful. It can get much farther that way. And that's the same thing as it is with the markets. So keep that in mind, guys, is that's what ultimately we're seeing here as the market did pause, and we'll continue to watch. Now, let's look at the QQQ, and we'll take a look at the Nasdaq too. Now, the interesting thing on the Nasdaq is you're beginning to focus on a trend line. All right, and this trend line is going to be very interesting to watch, because if you can break out above this trend line, clear sailing to this 50 moving average, in my opinion, to the upside. It's going to be a powerful breakup, and we need to see if that happens. So we hit the trend line for the second time today, and you can see we have a hit right here, right here, right here, right here, and again here today, this morning, when the Nasdaq was up as much as 20 points or so. And we'll see if we can break through that. Now, again, what we want to see is a few-day pause, or at least a pause, which we got today. And you can see after that ginormous move yesterday, the pause day, and then we'll see where we go. Do we have another pause day in the market, or do we have another thrust? Now, remember, there's a lot of things coming out over this next week, and we're going to go into them. All right, folks, and let's now take a look at the Nasdaq chart here, and you can see it's the same motion. Everything in the markets, what's beautiful about this is that it's all making the same pattern. And you guys know we preach the technicals like crazy, so I'm not going to get into too much odds and ends aside from technicals, but we love price, pattern, and time. That alone will make everything simple. And I do encourage everyone to go. We're having the seminar online, or what's called a webinar, where we teach all these price, time, pattern type things. And it is unbelievable to take a look at this. Anyone that has taken our webinar has come out so much wiser and so much more immune to the market BS that we talk about is the hype on Wall Street. So I really do encourage everyone to sign up. You can go to inthemoneystocks.com in the webinar, and we do have a limited amount of spots in the webinar, so it will get blocked off once that reaches its limit. We still have another few spots, though, so most of you guys should be able to sign up. In any case, you see the same pattern here. You see the hard thrust down and then the mega reversal. Now, oftentimes that can be a near-term reversal in trend, what you notice over time from studying chart patterns. And what you want to see after that is what we got today, which is the pause day, and then we look for the consolidation, either the thrust up to come, which will be the thrust, pause, thrust, the inthemoneystocks.com TNT play, or you can also look for a 3-bar pause or 2-bar pause, setting up for a third thrust or a fourth day thrust. Now, again, this is just stuff we accumulate over time, so it's a beautiful thing to come join the chat room, in the very least, where we do e-minis and day trading and just to talk the markets minute by minute every day, because we do go over all this stuff in the chat room as well. Not in the same depth. We really show the charts in the webinar, but nonetheless, it's a huge learning experience in the chat room as well. And we have a great group of individuals in there. I can't speak highly enough of all of them. They really add to the room as a whole. Now, let's take a look at a few odds and ends. Now, overall, we saw a pause in the markets, as we talked about, but we saw this more so in the various plays that ran big. For instance, remember Google yesterday was up huge, and we'll show Google and on the daily chart here, and you can see here how Google had a monstrous move. Now, compared to where it's come from, that's not a big move yesterday, but nonetheless, a 30-point move on Google or whatever it was up yesterday is a monster move. And it basically had a pause day, which you want to see as well. Google remains oversold near term, all right? All right, anytime you have a stock that drops like from here to here in a matter of 2.5 months, that's an oversold chart, unless you have, major announcements coming from the company like, oh, this or that. For the most part, Google's been, yes, they haven't outperformed on earnings like, everyone wanted for them to do, but that's a normal occurrence, guys. I mean, no company can continue to do that, because every time they do that, the expectation gets a little bigger. Eventually, it has to come in. So long story short, continue to watch for Google. Google had a pause day today, was just up 34 cents, and the Nasdaq, as I mentioned, was basically down 12, that perfect pause. We also saw the solar stocks relatively strong today again, which we mentioned yesterday, and we caught yesterday as well as a little bit of today. So again, we talked about that in the chat room. Watch the solar stocks. They continue to move up. I know a few in the chat room had the AKNS, which just had a monster move here today. This was an 80-cent move on a $6 stock, so you're talking about over 10% on the upside. All right, guys, so again, this is the way we're setting up for this market. There's not a whole lot to go over because it was a pause day, but it's important to understand what's coming up next week. So tomorrow's Thursday, then we have Friday. Next Monday, Tuesday, expect slow trading until we get the Fed on Tuesday. March 18th, the Fed will come out and release their interest rate cut. It's assumed to be a cut of 50 basis points at this point. It's all in the wording. The Fed finally got the message to use another method besides the interest rates to help the economy, And that's the key, and that's why we saw yesterday's rally be so massive. So if they can continue to do that, and they can stop killing the dollar, because really they need to start putting some emphasis on holding the dollar, because gold and oil were up again today. All right, you have oil at 110 now. 110. Now, you guys know about a week ago I mentioned to watch for the USO once oil reaches 110 for a possible short. It's almost there. I'm just not sold quite yet. All right, I think we may have one more push up in oil where we get a dollar or two spike through this 110 level, and then that'll be where I step up. So it's getting very, very close. I'm getting very antsy, all right? I had to be patient as we pushed over 100 to 101, 102, 103, and I know a ton of people out there said, should we short, should we short, should we short? I said, you got to be patient here because things can remain overbought for long periods of time. And let's just quickly look at that USO chart. Look at this chart, all right? Great move, no doubt about it, but it's getting toppy. Not quite there yet in my opinion. I may be wrong, but it's not quite there. All right, guys, keep a watch on this. Watch for another pause day or a big thrust day coming up. We'll talk about this more tomorrow. Have a wonderful evening, and remember, the charts tell the truth. Come join us. Take care.